We are facing an epidemic of mental infancy. More and more men are struggling to move out of their parents' house. They're not wanting to work. They're struggling to attract high quality women. They're experiencing chronic mental health issues. They're struggling to gain the respect of other men. It's like the transitionary period from boyhood to manhood that our grandparents went through, our parents went through, our ancestors went through, is now being blocked by this mind virus. And if this virus isn't cured, not only are you going to struggle with all those bad things I've mentioned, but you're running the risk of never fully developing. You're stuck in this limbo like a video game character that hasn't fully loaded in. And we might literally be spending the rest of our lives trying to play catch up while the fully developed men who didn't struggle with this run laps around us in life. Like the majority of Gen Z, I was raised pretty much fully by the internet. I was addicted to pornography from a young age. I lost myself in YouTube videos and TV shows and cartoons. By the time I was entering high school, which is kind of the final transitionary phases before you become a full adult, it's like I was being held back. I was extremely insecure, was mentally unstable. And even after graduating, moving out, and integrating myself into the world, I began to notice the disconnect between me and a lot of other guys, even guys my own age. And even when I got my own apartment, a job, I had literal bills to pay, I was still going back to all of my old childish habits. I was escaping for hours a day in video games. I was hitting them back-to-back goon sessions and just battling these intense negative emotions that it seemed like I had absolutely zero control over. And it was only when I reached my absolute lowest, deepest depression, my identity crisis, that I was like, maybe something's wrong here. And if I don't figure out what's wrong and fix this, I'm fucked. I'm gonna stay in this place, doing the things I don't want to do and yet seemingly can't do anything else. And finally, I was able to figure out the core principles. I found the infinity stones that snaps and turns you from a boy to a man. But first, I had to understand how I got here. What is programming us to remain in adolescence? Right off the bat, we have to acknowledge the abundance of comfort that the modern world offers us. So while ages ago, men faced direct physical discomforts if they didn't thrive and evolve and succeed, that's no longer the case. It has never been more easy to be physically comfortable regardless of your situation in life. I mean, you could be piss poor and still have air conditioning, a car to get you around, and a VR headset to watch porn on all day, and live better than a king did only a couple hundred years ago. And while certain levels of comfort is of course required for a child to properly develop, discomfort is required for a man to properly develop. We're also being held back by the current economy, which is making it increasingly difficult to progress in life. The boomers had it so easy. They could move out at 18, get a job at McDonald's, and buy a house in cash within a couple years. Whereas now, the simple task of moving out of your parents' house is so daunting because even a entry-level job can't afford rent or a mortgage, which is also leading parents to further encourage kids to stay in the nest longer because they fear for the financial security of their child. And finally, the mainstream narrative, society, is telling men that traditional masculine traits are bad. The internet has brought us endless funnels into these fantasy worlds that not only provide an escape from reality and all the struggles, but illusions of accomplishment. You see this a lot with millennials being Disney adults. Like they're 30-something years old and yet they go to Disney World, they watch the shows as if they're fucking 12. They became like the most hated group on the internet because they are the exact representation of over-consumerism. And then the follow-up generation seems to be replacing Disney with anime. I put the hentai stickers on my car because it's cool. I don't actually watch that stuff. And of course, when you critique things like this, you just hear people say, let people enjoy things, which is the most easily dismantled argument ever because it isn't joy. It's not true, authentic joy that comes from accomplishment or fulfillment in life. It is escapism. The pleasure you gain is escaping from the realities of the world or from touching your wiener to cartoons.
They are still women, but they have a penis.
For me, it was YouTube. I would watch these series that would provide escapes and distractions throughout my day. And the moment I would finish a series, I remember when I finished Video Game High School, it was like a show, but on YouTube. I got this overwhelming sense of anxiety, emptiness, and borderline depressing feelings because my escape, my fantasy realm that I got to occupy in has been robbed from me. So I rewatched it. And then of course I played a ton of video games which not only offered fantasy and escape, but a illusion of accomplishment. And unfortunately, this doesn't stick to entertainment. It's the same thing in politics. There are entire movements who base their ideologies around emotion and fantasy instead of reason and reality. But there's an underlying factor that supersedes everything I just mentioned, and I'm going to warn you, it is extremely controversial. This has been one of the most controversial topics in psychology for the past 200 years or so, and that is Sigmund Freud's Oedipus complex. What Freud believed is that there is a phase in a young boy's life where he unconsciously begins to desire his mother and resent the father, seeing the father as a competitor trying to win over the mom's affection and attention. When a boy enters this phase, it is the mother's job to not fully shun away the child, to be absent, but you also can't play into the boy's desires too much. Because if the mother were to become too overbearing, or to coddle the child or spoil the child, this blunts the child's ability to develop its individuality and independence. We see the most extreme example of this is the classic 40-year-old basement dweller who still lives with his mom and she brings him pizza rolls while he's on the game. So now understanding that, when you pair it with the current widespread increase in single mothers, in feminism and more masculine women, and in mentally unstable women who are now having children and doing the very coddling, controlling, and emotional manipulating that creates Oedipus complexing children, it makes complete sense why we're facing this epidemic. I saw this firsthand with someone extremely close to me. We'll call him Clyde. Clyde was born to a single mom. He was the youngest, so he was treated like the baby. He was coddled way too far into his childhood, often sleeping in his mother's bed instead of his own room. But eventually, Clyde's mom started dating. Clyde's mom got a boyfriend. That boyfriend became Clyde's stepdad. And Clyde began to resent and disrespect his mom and hate the stepdad, the new father figure. Clyde felt like he was cheated, and now to this day, he still somewhat resents his mother and has this warped view of women, of extreme distrust, because he projects the anima, the image of his mother when he was a child, onto every woman he meets. But look, I know that all sounds bad. Maybe that was a little too much fear-mongering, but the good news is you are not what happened to you. You are what you do after. And sure, we might have all been hit with some faulty programming, but that is code that can be rewritten and propel you into manhood, and thus attracting the high quality women you'd want, making the money that affords you the type of lifestyle you want to live, being respected by other men, and creating a brotherhood of grown-ass men to move forward in life with, instead of a bunch of dumb little man-childs that want to smoke weed and play CS all day. And finally, most importantly, the autonomy, the individuality, the independence from being a real man that grants you the freedom and fulfillment we all inherently desire. So here are my 5 principles that will propel you from boy to man. And principle 1 is throw yourself to the wolves. You're not supposed to sit around and wait for manhood to happen to you. You are supposed to embark out on your hero's journey that brings you the self-discovery and actualization that makes you into a man. The hero's journey is a story that transcends time, it transcends relevance, because it is literally what is required to become a man. That is why every single movie is about the main character venturing into the unknown and returning back changed, a new man. You need to cut yourself off from any physical or mental escapes. For example, I know that I cannot touch a video game, I cannot start a TV show, because I'm fully aware of the brain's propensity to addict itself to those very things. And for most of you, that also means crossing the threshold alone. You need to abandon your childish friends that will not change their ways. But you just said the economy's bad. Yeah, sure, it's not perfect right now, but there are people with less than you who started out worse off than you that are winning every single day. In fact, more millionaires were made during the Great Depression than any other time in history. And to be honest with you, it does seem like another depression is on the horizon. So this is the time to venture into the unknown and develop the skills and become a man, because if you can succeed in this, you will succeed for the rest of your life. And real quick, if you want to learn how I have these depression-proof skills and I'm able to make content and teach and sell information online, click the link below and join the waitlist for Audience Alchemy, because I'm going to be sending out a bunch of free knowledge and training over there pretty soon. And when you're doing this, you also need to enact Principle 2, detach from your parents or parental figures. And this isn't just literal as in physically moving out. I'm talking metaphorically, detach yourself from any reliance on your parents. Because look, I understand a lot of you watching this video literally can't move out right now, and that's perfectly fine, but you can still take the mental steps to detach from them in a way that will help propel you into manhood. And that requires realizing that they are just regular people who do not have all the answers. Sure, take any wisdom you can get, but to be honest with you, if you're trying to be above average and your parents are average, most of the things they say is not the gold you think it is. For me, this happened around a year after moving out, when my mother realized I'm not coming back, I'm on my own, and thus she began to talk to me more as a friend than a parent, and I became very aware of all the problems that she is facing and just how human she is as well, and that, oh wow, she really isn't that much ahead of me mentally at this point. It blows my mind to this day the amount of grown men that the moment they encounter hurdles in life or need help, they call up their mommy. And of course, most parents are going to want to help you. They don't want to turn away, but understand that when you do that, when your mom subconsciously registers that she failed to make you prepared for the real world, it hurts her deep inside. And one thing that will help with that is principle 3, taking responsibility regardless. Now, up until this point, if some of the things I've talked about you were not aware of, it literally wasn't your responsibility because you didn't know these problems existed. You didn't know you need to change. That's the same for everything in self-improvement. If someone is completely unconscious of the problems in their life and how to change, it's not technically their fault that they haven't changed. But the moment the problem comes into your awareness, it then becomes your responsibility to solve. So moving forward, anything that you can either take action on or respond to in your life is your responsibility and no one else's. Because like I said earlier, you are not what happens to you, you're what you do after. So one of the most obvious things that separates a boy from a man that the men of the world will pick up on if you don't have is the ability to control and transmute your emotions. Manhood requires you to break the identification with emotion. This is like cutting the puppet strings that the emotions typically had to control you, because most of the emotions we experience are brought forth from our subconscious mind in order to propel us into doing something. And since your subconscious isn't properly programmed, the thing it's trying to get you to do is typically either harmful or at least in the wrong direction. And the simplest and quickest way to gain emotional control is by developing the skill of metacognition. This is what allows you to observe these emotions and break the identification. So if you want to build that skill, I highly recommend checking out either my free 5-day guided meditation series in the description or Conscious Catalyst, which is my full 30-day meditation series that takes anyone from a beginner to a master of metacognition and mindfulness. But I know I said earlier to take responsibility for what's in your control, but the flip side of that coin is to also relinquish the care you have about things that are completely outside of your control. If there is something that you genuinely cannot do a single thing about, the most masculine thing you could do in response is to not care. But while stoicism is a skill you need to develop and master, it is not the complete answer. Because as men, we are still wired to accomplish great things when fueled by emotion. So if you just fully blunt yourself from emotion, you're not getting all the benefits. For example, anger. Anger isn't an inherently negative emotion. I mean, even Jesus flipped tables when he got mad. When you get authentically angry in the right way, it can propel you to defend someone you care about, to fight for your values. And you probably noticed that the majority of success stories start with the guy being angry at his current situation. But finally, the one thing that's going to truly put you not only with the average grown men in manhood, but a league above them is by transitioning yourself from being selfish to serving. It makes sense for a kid to be selfish. It needs the nutrients. It wants to play. It wants to have the toys. And it's up to the parents and the adults to say no sometimes. But most men stay like this. It's like the kid at the playground who wouldn't let any other kids play on the swing set, grew up, and still has that exact same mentality. And this is actually what a lot of alpha male guru types get wrong, because if you want to fully actualize and find fulfillment as a man, then you must not only serve yourself, but begin to serve others in your life, which actually further serves you because it gives you a deeper sense of responsibility and thus motivation to accomplish your goals. And of course, there's obvious things like helping out your family when you have a partner or your friends, but also a step above that would be to find a career or an interest that involves providing value to others in some type of way. This is one of the reasons why I love what I do, because not only am I talking about my interests online, but I'm actually helping people both with my free stuff and my paid stuff also have better lives. But look, the flip side of this is when you're starting out, you do need to be selfish. And that is actually long-term the most selfless thing you can do. Because when you're first venturing out, you're not going to be able to really help your family. You can't retire your mom. You can't be a great partner or lead other men if you haven't fixed your own shit first. Therefore, when you are starting out, be a little more selfish, focus on developing yourself, becoming the higher ideal version of yourself, because that is the best version of yourself that can go out and serve. But the biggest hurdle in this journey is going to be discipline. It's what I struggle with the most. It's what separates boys from men, literally 1-to-1. But unfortunately, the mainstream advice on discipline, even from the most disciplined guys on the internet, is actually causing men to further struggle. So to learn why that is and how to actually be consistently disciplined, click the video on the screen right now. And if you would like my full protocol to completely reprogram your mind from the bottom up, you can check out Mental Mastery, link in the description. That's it. Thank you for watching.